Aria of Sorrow is the best of the 3 Igavanias released on the Game Boy Advance, but is it close to beating Symphony of the Night? Let's find out. The legendary trinity of Igarashi, Kojima and Yamane return for the first time since Symphony of the Night, to create a game that comes closer to the 1997 classic more so than anything before. You can see this by the design of Soma Cruz, his sprites eerily similar to Alucard's, down to his weapons and movement abilities. Whips take a backseat once more to swords, not to mention spears, axes, hammers, the list goes on, making Aria play like it's Symphony of the Night's younger portable brother. This has its downsides. Juice's amazing two-way dash is gone, replaced with the Alucard-inspired backdash. With no shield to cancel the animation, your only method of going fast for much of Aria is an awkward jump cancel that is better left to the speedrunners. While getting around is significantly slower, Aria of Sorrow's more compact, tighter castle manages to maintain a steady, comfortable pace throughout. This is a huge improvement over the prior GBA titles. Aria of Sorrow has a multitude of quality of life changes, making the focus exploring the castle about moving forwards rather than wandering like a zombie. Secret rooms make a return, rewarding the most eager of explorers. Teleporters now allow you to select the exact place you want to go, as opposed to being teleported anywhere but your destination. Aria is the first Igavania to have a hub location, while not in the most intuitive of places, the castle's entrance. It's within a short trip of a teleporter, located next to the lowest level area in the game, becoming one of the few rooms which is comfortable and familiar to the player, a good source of downtime after you've finished exploring. Moreover, the entrance includes Hammer, the most convenient merchant so far, not needing a library card or to understand cryptic riddles to access, as well as Soma's childhood friend Mina, who can replenish your health and give hints about where to go. While this is a great help for newer players, it can also serve as a hindrance, since the randomness of her advice can potentially lead to players going to locations too early and becoming frustrated. Despite this, getting lost is a challenge in Aria of Sorrow, as a smaller scale castle does a good job of nudging the player in the right direction without the need of those hints. A more beneficial tool is the ability to purchase parts of the map from Hammer. Filling the empty spaces in the map gives a clearer image of the optimal path to your objective. As is the case with this genre, the more titles you play, the easier it is to understand what the developers want you to do. The structure of the entire castle is designed for players to explore a new location, defeat a boss and gain a new key item, then teleport back to the entrance to plan their next route. That is until the Chaos Realm, where the player is required to go through a long sequence of paths with no teleporters anywhere in sight. You have to wonder why the developers didn't just add an extra teleporter outside the final location, other than to artificially lengthen the experience. Before you enter the Chaos Realm, you're awarded the Black Panther Soul, a late ability that drastically boosts Soma's movement speed. It's not too different to the speed booster from Super Metroid. While a helpful soul for the last part of Aria, it is annoying to discover the game has held back a way faster means of movement for nearly the entire adventure, and there is no similar ability beforehand akin to the wolf form in Symphony of the Night or any kind of speedy soul for the early game. Souls are the major mechanic in Aria. Instead of using secondary items or magic, Soma instead has the ability to conquer monsters' souls, the utility of which varies. Bullet souls act as sub-weapons from the prior Castlevanias. Guardian souls are secondary skills that vary from transforming into creatures or skills like floating and even summoning a magical punch ghost. Wonder what that could be referencing. Enchanted souls are status alterations, such as boosting Soma's strength, stealing life force, or walking on water. Finally, ability souls are relics like Symphony or Harmony. Most are discovered after defeating a boss. They are the key method of progression throughout the game. It's not unlike the card system seen in Circle of the Moon, although there are far more souls to collect, 110 to be exact, and thankfully the drop rates are more frequent, save for some exceptions. Having 3 slots lets you mix and match abilities while experimenting with your playstyle, in a way not possible in prior GBA titles. While it is fun to play around with all the different souls on offer, the usefulness of each varies wildly. You'll spend a few moments having a good chuckle as Soma throws a horde of cats at an enemy before the novelty wears off and you equip a more useful ability. However, the option is there, and it makes finding each enemy akin to a present just waiting to be unwrapped. It's not clear what kind of abilities enemies will grant when you gain their souls. Thus, you can find some powerful abilities from enemies you would never guess drop them. But this can make the entire mechanic feel like a guessing game. The variety of weapons is great in numbers, but that's the problem. Lighter weapons such as fists suck. Knives are fast, but place you a razor's edge away from an enemy's hitbox. However, if anything, their move speed isn't much faster than the standard sword, unless you are able to knife cancel, but this video series is not about high level play. The standard sword is a poor man's variant of Alucard's sharp, precise attacks, but Soma's moves fall flat against Alucard's, thus are less satisfying as a result. Soma's strange, janky animations are the biggest problem in this, as nothing he uses has any real weight to it. The more exotic weapons like spears, hammers or axes are the worst offenders. His arm looks comically out of place as a large sprite rotates halfway around his body at a snail's pace. Many other weapons in Aria use the same animation template for everything from sacred dragon slayers to mini mallets, as animations feel clunky and without impact, disconnecting the motion from Soma's body and weight. The rare exception in all this is the whip sword. The reason being, its unique animations specific to Soma's playstyle that feels right against his swift, slinky swipes. When it comes to an attack's animation, there are four main components. Anticipation is the build-up before the keyframe. Smear is a technique that conveys arcs of movement, the main keyframe displaying the impact, and the return from the keyframe back to the neutral pose. So let's look at the whip sword animation to see how this works. We have our starting frame, which goes into a little smear to sell the motion, and then going straight into the first keyframe of the anticipation. The sword is starting to stretch and form the whip. This is all part of the anticipation phase, which is done through an easy ease. As it stretches out into our key animation, you'll notice a little bit of overshoot to help build emphasis on the impact. Pulling back into the main keyframe, it lingers a bit longer than anything else so far. The next stage is the follow through, which is anything that was affected by the original motion. It is the aftermath of the movement. This includes things such as hair, clothing, and in this case, the whip snapping back. You'll notice a tiny bit of smear as the whip arcs into its original position. Now that the whip has returned to its original form, Soma must also do the same. Most of this is the aftermath of the movement to help sell the impact of the whip. Some of these things are so subtle you might not have even noticed, but your brain did. We can look to other GBA examples to show how Aria could have been improved. Fire Emblem is the finest example of what the Game Boy Advance is capable of when it comes to satisfying animations that show off the power and energy of your characters. Even in the standard attack, you can see how much anticipation is built up. Lin's katana swings show a satisfying usage of slashing weapons instead of Soma's weak animation. You can see that Lin goes through this more visually complex motion in less frames with more flourish. But player characters need to have less anticipation than in an RPG. Mega Man Zero, another action game, understands the importance of smears and uses them in all of Zero's sword animations. Despite the lack of frames, the impact keys are just long enough to make every attack feel deadly. It's supported further by having any enemies killed by Zero's saber split in two with this satisfying linger just before exploding, and gets the message across to the player that Zero is a cool and powerful character. While I could go into further detail, this video is not an animation lecture, so I will summarise. What is the worth of having an armory of weapons if they don't feel good? While Circle of the Moon was a frustrating challenge that left a bitter taste and Harmony of Dissonance was too much of a cakewalk, Aria of Sorrow's challenge is just right. It's not without its problems though. Enemy placements still suffer from issues dating back to Symphony of the Night, being incredibly sporadic. While some areas work well, there is still that one room where it feels as if the developers are purposely trying to annoy the hell out of you. overloading rooms with as many obnoxious enemies as possible. Overall, bosses are where the main challenge of Aria lies. The variety is far better than what previous GBA entries had to offer, and I was able to figure out patterns to best these foes in a way that made the challenge a satisfying experience. Death is the most challenging fight, playing out akin to his classic incarnations. While there is no large transformation this time around, he has a multitude of challenging patterns that are clear to see, but still tough to execute as he flings his scythe across the room. Julius is the second time Igavania has put the player against the Belmont family. However, this time is far more challenging, as Julius has a large pool of health and a monstrous arsenal of attacks. Playing from the perspective of Dracula makes this all the more fresh, the core Castlevania battle flipped on its head. The fact he's holding back makes me wonder what the real fight would be like. Balor is another memorable and challenging fight, a colossal beast that can easily dispose of a careless player. His large, imposing sprite is truly one of Aria's most impressive enemies, as well as the most surprising, being introduced by crushing one of the iconic bosses of the series, in a beautiful, gory fashion. Balor is one of the few true moments of spectacle in Aria. I put emphasis on few because Aria of Sorrow is nowhere near as spectacular or flashy when compared to Harmony. Harmony of Dissonance has an array of visual showcases littered throughout the game. By the time Igarashi and his team focused on Aria's development, they could have burnt out all their ideas, save for that twist. Despite this, when it comes to how Aria of Sorrow looks on a technical level, there is no doubt it's one of the finest titles in the Game Boy Advance. The garish colour choices seen in Harmony have been toned down while still offering enough colour not to suffer the problems Circle of the Moon had with its lack of contrast. The backgrounds are the most refined of the GBA Igavanias, the detail of which is on a far larger level. However, many areas feel like Aria trying its best to look like Symphony, as opposed to creating its own identity. It's odd that despite the game's setting of the distant future, the concept is not played around with. It all feels a bit safe. You hear Castlevania set in 2030 something and expect to see skeletons with jetpacks. The most you get are a few joke weapons and some of the most obscure fashion the series has ever seen. As much as I love Ayami Kojima's art style, I have to question whether flared jeans and rockabilly boots are really going to be the look of the future. The release of the Game Boy Advance SP with its backlight removes the need for flashing outlines on its sprites, as seen in Harmony. Soma is the smallest sprite of the three with a lot more unique animations available compared to Nathan and Juiced, which is no surprise as Aria's development was the longest in the trilogy. While Aria is less inclined to show off, this decision has paid off by making it a tighter visual audio experience than Harmony. After the criticism of Harmony's OST, a greater effort was made to ensure Aria of Sorrow's music was able to deliver. The audio tools were reworked, now using more cartridge space and processor cycles. The difference in sounds from Harmony to Aria is day and night. As a further reassurance of good faith, Igarashi confirmed that Michiru Yamane was returning to compose the soundtrack, and she does not disappoint. With a collection of distinct, memorable compositions, Yamane proves to be the queen of Igavania's sound. We have heart-pumping, high-energy tones in Castle Corridor, the Arena, and a recreation of Heart of Fire. We have captivating, eerie instrumentations in Floating Gardens and Theme of Mina, and the small Bloody Tears melody in the epilogue gives a satisfying injection of nostalgia. It's the strongest Castlevania soundtrack on the GBA, however that very hardware is what is holding it back from true greatness. As great as these songs are, they just cannot compare to the likes of Symphony of the Night, which is still the superior soundtrack of the Igavania series. Fortunately, a number of Aria of Sorrow's tracks were recomposed and adapted as bonus songs in Lament of Innocence's soundtrack CD, giving these songs a place to truly shine outside of the confines of the Game Boy Advance. The story in Aria of Sorrow is, well, not how you remember it. I remember this game's story being one of the best in the series, truly a magnum opus in the Castlevania franchise, weaving a tale of an innocent youth discovering a twisted, corrupting power not entirely his own. fighting for his life in a demented lair of pure evil, eventually discovering a shocking truth that the source of this evil lays dormant within him. With a side cast of memorable, beloved characters that seal the narrative as one of the most charming and impactful stories of all time. But the reality is, Aria of Sorrow's story is underwhelming.
The reality is no match for the legend, I'm afraid.
Oh, I don't believe that.
Much like Soma must face the fact that Dracula resides within him, we must face the paper-thin narrative that is Aria of Sorrow, only propped up by its major twist. Giving credit where credit is due, it's a cool twist, memorable. However, the rest of the story is as weak and unimpressive as Graham, who is such a dull antagonist, lacking any presence of intimidation. I'm stunned that he believes himself to be the true Lord of Darkness. This unremarkable loser is the very description of why Dracula sees the human race as a weak, inferior,
miserable little pile of secrets.
His boss fight, coming straight from the How to Be a Dracula Boss 101 handbook, I barely remember this guy even exists half the time. His most defining moment in the story is that he stabs a lady in the gut and runs away. Last I checked, running away and not finishing what you started isn't one of Dracula's powers. Other characters are serviceable at best. Many of them lack any minor defining character traits. Mina can be best described as the pure, prim and proper waifu. Yoko is a sultry tease who spends most of her time confusing Soma and then getting shanked by Graham. Julius is cool, how can he not be, as the Belmont who put Dracula away for good. However, he never breaks away from his Belmont template. Great boss fight though. Genya McNot Alucard is this vaguely mysterious stranger who sometimes helps Soma on his journey, with his defining power, exposition, lending to one of the script's biggest issues. Always telling, never showing. And then there is Hammer. He's alright. This is disappointing, as you don't get to know these people, and I wanted to. Speaking of characters we don't get to know, our protagonist is just as bad. The core characteristic I could take from Soma was, he's confused. Most of what is being said in these scenes is mystery for the sake of mystery. Everything is presented to build intrigue to keep you playing, but not all of the answers are satisfying. And when you pull back the mystery of the plot, there isn't much else.
Where am I? What happened? Who the heck are you? Why? Hang on. Where are we? Dracula's castle. You think I'm telling me we were in an explanation? What's that? Why you? Why would I have that? How is
that? Ask yourself, is this the gold standard of Castlevania writing? Aria's endings range between good, okay, and bad. Players are most likely to see the okay ending on their first playthrough, as there are no hidden requirements, you simply need to defeat the supposed final boss. For anyone able to work out that you need to battle Graham while equipped with the Flame Demon, Giant Bat and Succubus souls, you will be able to continue to the true final boss, Chaos. This segment almost mirrors the reverse castle from Symphony of the Night, as this part of the game is hidden from players unless they can piece everything together. The bad ending is unlocked by losing to the final battle, and while it is an amazing, chilling ending, it's annoying and the end credits that follow are unskippable. Every fail state on the path to the good ending is another long test of your patience. Chaos isn't a necessarily tough battle once you figure out the precise places you're supposed to stand, it then becomes a little tedious. Defeating him gains the good ending. Just like Harmony, there is a slightly better ending available with some minor differences. If you collect all the souls, then defeating Chaos makes Soma feel pretty cool. Mina and Soma will then hold hands. Well hey, absorbing 110 souls of the damned is definitely the fastest way to gain my affections. Can't say I don't blame Mina, what a catch. Furthermore, for players who do somehow gain every single soul, they will be able to obtain the Chaos Ring, located in the final zone. This ring gives the player infinite MP when equipped. Certainly a powerful reward, however due to it being in the final location of the game, this is merely for the bragging rights. Your rewards for beating Aria of Sorrow are the varying alterations to gameplay, such as being unable to use souls or items. Boss Rush and Sound Test return once more, and like previous Igarashi installments, you can unlock an alternative character, this time Julius Belmont. Once more, hard mode is hidden away as an unlockable only to people able to beat the game, although with an extra condition, getting the good ending. Just as stated in my Harmony of Dissonance video, hard mode should be an option right away for players wanting a higher challenge. Aria of Sorrow introduces New Game Plus, allowing players to restart with most of the souls and items from the first time through. I say most because for some inexplicable reason, relic souls like Black Panther are unavailable. Why Igarashi does not want anyone who has already explored his castle to have a faster way through truly boggles my mind, as having the mastered movement on a new adventure is surely the main appeal of a New Game Plus mode. If you wish to play any of these Game Boy Advance games, your options are to buy the original carts or the dual cart re-release. If you live in Europe and happen to own a mobile phone from 2008, congratulations! You can play an awful downscaled port of Aria of Sorrow. All three games are also available on the Wii U's Virtual Console, arguably the most accessible way to get hold of these titles legally. Unfortunately, emulation is still the easiest way to play these titles, as much as it upsets Nintendo's army of lawyers. Until there is a more convenient alternative, that is where many players will resort to. Just like Symphony of the Night, it's sad to see that these titles have not been released on any relevant hardware or system, as they're integral to how Igavania games evolved through the years. Maybe with enough demand and support, we can see these games ported on systems like the Switch, or services like Steam. Go on, Konami. Do it. Do it, you fucking wuss. Nevertheless, Aria of Sorrow has earned many accolades. It is on countless best GBA games ever lists, as well as being one of the highest ranked games for the system and the Castlevania franchise. So far, this praise is well earned. While Aria of Sorrow misses the mark in some areas, there is no denying how excellent this adventure is. It is truly the standout of the three GBA-vanias. However, Aria of Sorrow is still eclipsed by Symphony of the Night as the lord of the Igavania series. The limitations of the system create far too many compromises that it's unfair to compare these titles. It may as well be in another league. As the hardware improves, Igarashi's team get closer to surpassing Symphony of the Night, as opposed to trying to recapture its magic. For now, we're close to that greatness. Next time, Igavania makes its first leap into the third dimension, Lament of Innocence.